Welcome to the ProZone. I'm Matt Roberts. So right now, if you haven't been paying attention, the transfer portal is in full effect. What is the transfer portal? Well, the transfer portal in college sports is basically the transferring of athletes from school to school. That's how it works. So what happens is this. An athlete is at a school. He or she wants to move from one school to another school. So what they would do in the past is they would request a transfer. They go to their compliance officer at the college, and the compliance officer would then evaluate the athlete and make sure they're in academic and athletically good standing and they qualify in those areas. And once they qualify, then what they'll do is allow them to transfer to another school. Now, you have certain criteria you have to meet. And then once you meet those criteria, then you can transfer. And usually, you don't have to sit out an academic year. You can transfer once without a problem, and then you're good to go. They changed that back in about 2018. They created the transfer portal. So what is the transfer portal? Well, it's basically transferring, but the difference is that the kids will put their names into a giant database. So now you have this massive database that all the colleges can access, and they can look through all the kids that are in the portal, in the database, and they can decide who they want from that database and try to recruit those kids for their teams. So before it was you would try to transfer and then you would try to market yourself to another college or go to a coach that you knew or a recruiting person like myself who's been doing this for 20 years. And the kid comes up to me, and for example, we had a young man who wanted to transfer in May of his going into his junior year. So it was May. So he wanted to transfer. He came to me and he said, can you get me to transfer? He was a running back. So I had to contact colleges to see who was interested in him. And the feedback I got from most of your colleges were, well, we have running backs. We don't need him now. And that's just how it works. So it was harder that way because you had to really sell the kids, or the kid had to sell themselves. Well, now there is a transfer portal database, and the kids put themselves in that database, and then the coaches go through that whole database and look for kids, try to find the kid that they want to recruit or bring in. Then they try to woo that kid and get him into the school. Now, him or her, but we're talking football right now because that's what just recently happened. So football is the big deal, okay? Any sport can transfer. I mean, every single sport athletes can transfer and enter the transfer portal. They all can do it. But football right now is special precedent because it just recently happened. There was a transfer window. Every sport has a window. Okay, I'm going to step back a bit because there's a lot to unpack on this. And I may not be able to cover the entire thing in this show, so we may have to expand on it because it gets deeper and deeper. So we're going to try to do as much of a deep dive as we can today without being too overwhelming. And then we're going to get you guys educated on this and then kind of sort it out because there's some weird stuff going on here with Transfer Portal, all right? So the Transfer Portal window for FBS, FCS, which is a football bowl series and football championship series, those teams that enter the bowl, FBS, and FCS is what used to be called 1AA or now FCS. They don't enter a bowl, they have a championship. That's Division 1. Division 1, 1AA. Their window was December 4th through January 2nd. So if you've been following Twitter, or now X, you're seeing the feed flood with kids, if you're tracking that kind of stuff like I am, who have entered the portal. This kid is planning to enter the portal. This kid announced he will enter the portal. This kid has entered the portal. And then every day there's somebody new entering the portal. And when the first day opened, December 4th, it was craziness. Everybody entered. We only ask, but how can these kids enter the portal? Are they allowed to do it whenever they want to? How easy is it? Well, that's where we have the gray area, okay? Like I said, every sport can transfer. But what happened with the NCAA with football is you can transfer one time. Let me pull up the NCAA rules here. The rules for transfer basically are right here. You have to follow 4 criteria, okay, in transferring. And you have to register to transfer. And then once you do transfer, we find that here, I should have had it ready. Here we go. You can have, if you transfer from, this is from the NCAA's website, okay, from their documentation. If you transfer from a 4-year school to an NCAA Division I or Division II school, you may use an exception to compete immediately if you receive certification from your compliance office on campus and meet one of the following conditions. Okay, so normally if you don't meet one of these five conditions, then you can't compete right away and you have to sit out a year. Right now, I'm telling you that because there's a reason for it. We'll get to it. Number one, this is your first transfer. So if you're very first time transferring, no problem. You shouldn't have an issue as long as you're qualified. You shouldn't have an issue being able to transfer and compete right away. Fair enough. The second one is you return to your first school without participating in sports at the second school. So if you were at a school and you went back to your other school and you didn't compete in sports, you should be able to compete right away. Your sport has been dropped or not sponsored at your current school. So if you're going to Penn State and they drop a sport that you were playing and you want to play that sport somewhere else, then you can go to another school and transfer without sitting out a year. You are not recruited. You are non-recruited or non-scholarship. So if you don't have a scholarship, easy peasy, not a problem, because there's no contract to that. Now, I'm going to have a whole different show regarding contractual obligation. That ties into a lot of different stuff, and we're going to have to kind of talk about it here a bit. But tune in, watch more of our shows. You'll see when I hit these topics, they're pretty informative and essential to learn. So, and then the fifth one is you have not participated in your sport for 2 years. Okay. Now, that's a given. You haven't played for 2 years. You can transfer and compete right away without a problem. Right. Well, this is your first transfer is one we're going to focus on right now, because this is what caused what's happening right now with the transfer portal. It's mass chaos, by the way, in the transfer portal. Mass chaos. It is the Wild West out there. And let me explain to you why. Back a couple of years ago during COVID, okay, you had, I'm pulling that article up right now, you had a legal issue that arrived because you had a legal issue that came up that a kid had transferred to a school. I'm making it basic. The kid transferred to a school and he wanted to play. Then COVID happened. So then all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to transfer again because I don't want to stay here anymore. COVID screwed things up. And the NCAA rules were, well, you transferred once and you were allowed to compete right away. But he said, yeah, but I couldn't compete because of COVID. So what happened is he contacted an attorney, and the attorney jumped on and said, well, NCAA, this is what we want to do. We want to transfer. NCAA said, all right, fine. You're going to sue us for this, so you could transfer. So the kid was able to transfer again. So now the first exception, that first time transferring, you can't transfer more than once. Now he's allowed to. Well, guess what that does if you're a lawyer? If you're a lawyer or a court of law, that is called setting a precedent. Now, what's a precedent? P-R-E-S-C-E-N-D-T. Precedent. A precedent is basically makes a lawyer salivate. It says, oh, this has been done before? Oh, well, if the court of law ruled this way before, then we're going to go with that and use it in our litigation. That's why these lawyers love to reference previous lawsuits, previous cases and decisions in Supreme Court, in regular court, because they use that to say, well, it's been done before, so we got to do it now because the law was set based on the courts. And that's what happened there. Now another kid decides just this past year, I'm going to transfer now. And I'm going to transfer more than once. I transferred once. I want to do it again. And the NCAA says, well, based on rules, no, you can't. And he got a lawyer. And then the lawyer said, okay, we're going to sue you and precedent. And the NCAA said, fine, you can transfer again. And it happened a third time. Well, this one lawyer that they kept tapping into, he started talking to other people, and then the state's attorneys general got involved. There were 7 different states. Let me see which states there were here. We had 7 different states that got involved in the case. Here we go. Ohio, Colorado, Illinois, New York, North Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia. And those states' attorneys general jumped on board this and said, look, man, we're going to argue that, and it says here, the transfer eligibility rule, basically that one-time transfer rule, violates Section 1 of it's called the Sherman Antitrust Act. Now, the Sherman Antitrust Act is from like 1830, and it's basically prohibits agreements that unreasonably restrain market competition. Now, what's that mean? Well, if you're an athlete and you have a scholarship and you sign a scholarship, that's a contract. That's your agreement with the school to play there. But with this lawsuit, they're saying that the agreement that you sign unreasonably restrains market competition. Translation, you not being able to transfer does not allow the kid to market themselves properly. They can't play the sport. They don't get visibility on television. They don't get the visibility from pro coaches, so it damages their market value. Add NIL, name, image, and likeness into this, and you have a whole different kettle of fish, which I have a whole other show coming on NIL. Wow. That is insanity. When you get into name, image, and likeness, it's absolute insanity. And it's going to be out of control. And we'll discuss that in a different show, different episode. So it says here, in the state's attorneys generals argue that the transfer rule effectively constitutes an illegal agreement between the NCAA's member schools, which is the schools, all the schools. They're the ones that determine the rules. Okay, the member schools do. To artificially restrain college athletes' ability to participate in the market for their labor. Additionally, they assert that by discouraging athletes from finding ideal matches with schools and imposing a one-year eligibility loss to those who transfer, the rule harms the future earning potential of the college athlete. And what does that mean, the one-year eligibility loss? Well, if you do not qualify, say you've transferred once, or in this case, if you don't meet one of the 5 criteria, the state's attorneys general, they are arguing that if you don't meet those criteria, the rules are that you have to sit out a year by the NCAA. So the attorneys general are arguing, the lawsuit states that, hey, look, by making them sit out a year, you're losing a year of eligibility. Now, what's eligibility? For those who don't know, eligibility, you have a 5-year window in schools. You have basically a red shirt year, which does not count. If you're a red-shirted athlete for the first year, a lot of schools, you hear about that, they redshirted him. What does that mean is athlete goes in to play football or any sport, and they decide, look, you're not quite there yet. We want to get you in shape. We want you to maintain your 4 years of eligibility, because you have 4 years of actual eligibility. We want you to maintain those 4 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to redshirt you for a year. You're not going to play with the team at all. You can practice, you can lift, but you're never going to dress and you're never going to play. Now, the minute you start to play the sport, you're on the clock. That's the thing. Your clock starts for your eligibility, and you have 4 years left. And that's all. Okay. So your eligibility is 4 years. So now say you're a freshman at a school and you're there and you want to transfer, and you transfer to another school and you don't meet one of those 5 criteria that we originally discussed. Then the NCAA will say, okay, well, you have to sit out a year. Well, by sitting out a year and you've already played as a freshman, now you're going to lose a year of eligibility at that next school by sitting around doing nothing for a year, because you have to kind of sit there and wait. That's the rules. It helps. The reason they have the rule is, why would they have that rule? The reason they have the rule is because it creates unfair competition. It prevents an athlete from leaving one school and then jumping into another school and then transferring again. And then you can just jump right in and go to an opponent, and the opponent can woo you away and you can jump right in and play for the team. Can a team recruit a kid away from a school? Well, no. They really can't, based on NCAA rules. They cannot contact you prior to a transfer. But let's be honest. Do you think these coaches don't try to contact these kids? I mean, the kid can reach out to the coach, but some coaches, not all coaches, but some coaches will bend the rules, text the kid, Twitter message, Instagram message. The NCAA can't monitor all of that. or go through someone who is a kind of a go-between. Hey, by the way, why don't you go to this school? This coach really wants you to play there. They have an open spot. Now, someone like me who does this for a living and is professional, I don't fall into those rules. So if I have a kid who wants to transfer, like that one young man, that one May who wanted to transfer, that running back, I was able to contact schools and put feelers out. Say, I got a kid. Do you want him? And if they say, yeah, we're interested, then I'd say to him, okay, look, man, these guys like you, transfer. Then we can get you interested. But they cannot initiate contact. But there are ways around it. Now, I'm going to say most of your college coaches, I hope anyway, follow the rules. If they get caught, then they're screwed. But those rules have already been bent into a pretzel with all this new stuff between name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal. It's the rules are out the window. But they're trying to enforce them, but we'll get to that. All right. So if the kid transfers, they lose a year of eligibility, and now they can't play, and that's the lawsuit says, oh, wait a second, it's unfair. Now you're not letting the kid play for a year. They lose eligibility, which loses market value. They lose scholarship money, all that good stuff. So what happens next? Well, the NCAA said, all right, so now we are in basically litigating this whole thing. Actually, they're in a thing. I have notes right here from I talked to NCAA Legal actually yesterday, just to confirm some information. The NCAA Legal said we are in they filed an injunction. Okay, injunction. Now, what's an injunction? Injunction basically it's in the courts. It's in the courts, and they're deciding the case right now. It's being decided upon. So that could go on for a very long time. There's no real end to it. It depends on how quickly they want to resolve the court case. Okay, hear evidence, all that. So they filed an injunction to stop the NCAA or the NCAA filed an injunction saying that we're not going to let kids, or they filed an injunction with the NCAA saying you're not going to be able to, you got to stop kids from recruiting while we're figuring this all out, from transferring while we're figuring this all out. Okay. Well, that's a problem because if you look at the schedule, your football is going on right now, but your other sports have windows too. You have winter, which is like April. Like, for example, let's do ice hockey. Men's ice hockey, March 31st through May 14th. You have lacrosse, May 12th of 2024 to June 10th of 2024 is that transfer window. So those transfer windows, and they're decided on by the member schools, the colleges. The colleges get together and they decide the rules. Okay, so by filing that injunction and stopping all recruiting or all transferring, that until the football thing sorted out. Well, God knows how long it's going to go on. And according to NCAA Legal yesterday, they said, hey, look, man, it could affect the people in the spring too. And we don't want to screw the spring sports. We got to let them transfer because they're not the ones trying to break the rules. Football law. Okay. So we have to allow transferring to happen. And as a result, basically the NCAA said, all right, fine. Transfer as many times as you want. We don't care. Rock and roll. Just do it. Because that's the only option we have. It's either we stop it for everybody or we cater to the football players who just want to transfer whenever they want to transfer. Okay? And that's what's happening. As of the 2nd of January, the end of transfer portal, really the 3rd, because I checked it when everything is over, of the football players that play, 1,983 entered the transfer portal. 1,983. That is 7% of every single Division I player for football has entered the transfer portal. 33% have already committed to another school, and I believe 0.7% of them have withdrawn their transfer. They left the portal. Basically, withdrawing is they decided to stay with their own team. They chose to leave it and stay with their team. Now, this is what a lot of these kids may not understand. When you enter the transfer portal, if you have a scholarship, you give up that scholarship. It's gone. So your scholarship, how the scholarship works, first off, let's step back and explain that. Scholarship is if you're given a 4-year deal to a school, A 4-year, we're giving you a full ride for four full years. That's not the fact. They're saying they want to give you 4 years, but you have to be qualified for those 4 years every single year. So if you're not athletically and academically qualified or at the end of each year, they can pull your scholarship. You have to meet your criteria. Okay? So if you're not performing well enough, they can pull your scholarship. If you're not academically performing well enough, they can pull your scholarship. And they have until July 1st of every year to decide whether or not they want to renew your scholarship. Now, that's after the window. I mean, you got to think about this. The recruiting window for a transfer, if you want to transfer from one school to another, then that window, the hot window, is basically from December to the end of January, because signing day is the first Tuesday in February usually. Okay, for Division I. Division II, it's around St. Patrick's Day, around that time of year in March when Division IIs make their final decisions. Division III all year round. I mean, they recruit. I've marketed kids to Division III schools in June, for crying out loud. They're just trying to fill spots. And there's no real restrictions on Division III schools. Division II schools, again, St. Patrick's Day. But your Division I stop at signing day. So December to January is a sweet spot, which explains why, makes some sense, why the member schools in the bylaws decided, hey, look, let's make our transfer window for Division I December 4th through January 2nd. Because if kids go to transfer, we have the dibs on the good players, the veterans, the post-grads, your fifth-year students, your seniors, whatever, your upperclassmen who've played. We have dibs on all those kids early before we have to worry about so much filling in gaps with our high school recruits, okay? So that causes an issue with the scholarships. So you have a scholarship. Let's go back to that. You have a scholarship, and your scholarship, again, they can renew it every year. Now, most of the time, they're probably going to renew that scholarship prior to July 1st, but they do have, based on the rules that the member schools decided on, they have until July 1st to say, okay, good. We're going to renew your scholarship, but we're not going to renew it. All right? But every year, again, they have to renew your scholarship. So once you enter the portal, you're giving up that scholarship. You're saying, yep, I'm done, I'm out. Now, if you enter the portal and you get rid of it, but then you decide to go back, will the school take you back and maintain your scholarship? Probably. Most likely they would. But do they have to? No. So you're entering the transfer portal, you're gambling. You're saying, I'm going to give up my scholarship. I'm going to enter the transfer portal. I'm going to hope that another team picks me up. And if they don't, I'm going to hope that my school takes me back, if that was your mission all along. You can't have it both ways, kids. That's not how it works. So 1,983 Division I football players, some of them freshmen, some of them just got there. They enter the portal, and for all different reasons. Coaches change, the game plan changes, whatever, too much competition, they're riding the pine too long, not playing enough, whatever. But they're entering the portal, and you have 1,983 kids competing for spots on schools, hoping they'll get picked up. So how many of those kids are going to lose their scholarships? Well, right now, as it stands, only 33%, which is pretty good, a third, but only a third have been picked up by the colleges. Hey guys, thank you for watching the ProZone. Make sure you check back for more episodes. And if you haven't done so already, like, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what we have coming up next.